And so I said to myself that I was going to be a woman that other women and young girls would see and want to be like, because I realized that the more you see somebody like you achieving things you never imagined you could ever achieve, the more it raises your faith in who you can become. First of all, the world is changing. So what you thought you knew last year may not be able to compare with what the knowledge that is actually available today. Develop yourself as fast as you can. Get all the knowledge that you can. Read widely. Please do as quick as you can. Be a doer. So, yes, be a learner and a thinker, but also be a doer. And you will never know if you would have succeeded until you actually try.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I just have a favor to ask before we begin. If you've been enjoying these conversations and want more stories that redefine success, please do us a massive favor and hit the subscribe button over on our YouTube channel. It literally takes 2 seconds to do and is completely free. It's a small gesture, but it makes a massive difference for us as it really helps us to grow the show. And with that, let's get into the episode. All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thanks so much for tuning in once again. Today on the show, I'm really looking forward to this one because we're joined by Dr. Toyin Sanni, who is a Nigerian investment banker, an entrepreneur. She's got decades of experience in both law and finance. So really looking forward to unpacking her story.
And I had the privilege of meeting Toyin almost 3 years ago at Harvard Business School, and this is actually a kind of a reunion after many years. So I probably never had the chance to understand your story. So it's a great opportunity for me to understand and share this story with everyone. Thank you, Toyin, for joining us.
You're welcome. It's so great to connect with you, Jam. It was an honor to study alongside with you at the Harvard Business School. Lovely to finally meet Dylan.
Likewise, Toyin. And for us to begin this conversation, I really want to ask a very fundamental question, and that is, what does success actually mean to you?
It's a great question. Success for me is having a great sense of fulfillment in terms of my ability to accomplish what I see as my assignment to the people that God has placed in my life. So, my assignments in the lives of my family, my assignments to my community, my assignments to the people that I lead, and the colleagues that I have at work. I have a very strong sense of purpose and destiny. I believe that none of us is here by accident. I believe I was put here to fix something. I'm a problem solver by nature. And the more I feel I have accomplished in terms of solving those problems, the more successful I feel.
That's brilliant.
And what do you think it is that you've been put here to do?
Thank you. I believe my thank you so much. I believe my mission in life is to help people actualize purpose. So I do that through a lot of mentoring, teaching, coaching, and I also do that through providing funding resources and funding access for people to pursue their dreams. So for me, my entire purpose revolves around teach them, fund them, guide them.
It's a great philosophy to have. And I suppose for us to understand, the woman that we're speaking to, we need to go back to your early life. Can you walk us through your upbringing and how you think it's shaped who you've become?
Thank you. I had an upbringing that was interesting because my parents were completely different personalities. And so my father taught me the values of service to humanity. All his life was about serving his community, and he reflected love completely and totally. Love for me, love for my siblings, love for my mother, love for his community. And he lived out his life in service to, humanity. My mother taught me discipline and hard work and grit. So she was an entrepreneur. She was an extremely, so my father was a public servant,
Mm-hmm.
and everything he did, he lived to serve his community. Years after he had left his village, he went back frequently to listen to the needs of the members of the village. They had sessions with him, and he came back to the city and worked to help them. He was that kind of person. My mother was an entrepreneur. She was a businesswoman. She worked hard until the day she died, and she taught me grit. There was really nothing that could phase her, and I saw her over and over again overcome really big challenges in life. And so for me, it's a wonderful blend, and the person I am today is a wonderful blend of both of them. And that was my childhood. My father valued education.
Yep.
He valued education a lot. He believed he should give the best education to all his children. Not only did he do his best to send us to the best schools he could afford, but he taught us personally. I learned mathematics personally, sitting on my father's laps. I learned
Wow.
arithmetic, I learned mathematics, and I learned economics from him from a very, very early stage in life. So those are some of the values that
Yeah.
shaped me and made me who I am today.
Yeah. Toyin, what were you thinking early days you wanted to become?
Now, that question actually is at the root of who I am and what I do today. Because in my formative years, it was very hard in my community in Nigeria, and particularly in my hometown, to find women who did anything other than homemaking
Uh-huh.
or worked in entertainment. So the earliest women that I saw on television were backup dancers to major artists. Nigeria had a big artist called Fela, and I saw the ladies, being backup dancers while he and his band, essentially performed. They were, seen but hardly ever known by name or recognized. And then, of course, the other women I knew were homemakers and a few our teachers in school. So I grew up thinking I was going to be a dancer.
Yeah.
And for me, it felt like, the height of my ambition, because at least they got to be on television and
Yeah.
people got to see them and know them. And then one day, I must have been about 8 years old.
Uh-huh.
I flicked on the TV and I saw a woman that was being announced as the chairman of one of the largest and most prominent banks in Nigeria. And she was brilliant, erudite, elegant, amazing. And all the men looked up to her and they were listening to her. She chaired that board, and I took a look and I just realized, no, I want to be that.
Yeah. She's got more attention than the dancers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. She was I mean, she was just amazing. She was an accountant. She had risen to be the chairman of the board of United Bank for Africa, and incidentally called Africa's Global Bank, a bank I would eventually go and work with and spend 12 and a half years working in
Wow.
that banking group. It was also the first bank I opened a bank account with at the age of 18. It's interesting, but she sparked that ambition, and she's late now, gone to be with the Lord, but she was amazing. And for me, it also birthed in me the recognition of the importance of mirrors and mentorship. And so
Yeah.
I said to myself that I was going to be a woman that other women and young girls would see and want to be like, because I realized that the more you see somebody like you achieving things you never imagined you could ever achieve, the more it raises your faith in who you can become.
Yeah. And you receive a law degree at very young age.
Yeah.
something like 18 years old. And
Yeah,
how did you manage to
absolutely.
get into university and got a law degree such a young age?
Fantastic. So I entered university at the age of 14 plus,
Wow.
and just about to turn 15. I gained admission into university just about to. I started school very early in life. I actually started school at the age of 2, and the
Huh?
reason was because at that point in time I was the youngest child. My father used to, like I said, he was a public servant, so he ran what was called the Treasury Cash Office in my hometown, and upstairs was our family apartments, the official apartments, and downstairs was his office with him and his team. So when after my siblings had gone off to school, he would be sitting in his office, and then he would see me come down the stairs and start talking to the trees and the walls. I would have a ruler in my hand, and I would ask the walls and the trees, "Did you do your homework today? What did you do today? You've been naughty today, you know." So he said to himself, "This girl is lonely, and she's clearly very fast. I need to get her in school." So one of those days, he just came out of his office, put me in the car, drove me to the nearest nursery school, and that's how I started school at the age of 2. So by 9, I had passed out of primary school and gone into secondary school, and I finished secondary school at 14, and there was really nothing to do with me. So the only university in Nigeria that was open to very young students was the it was called University of Ife then. Now it's called Obafemi Awolowo University. And so I got and gained admission to study law, which was my dream course, and there was no keeping me back. And the comfort was that we were going into school, university at the beginning of September, and I would turn 15 on September 10. And so I entered university and spent 4 years, graduated at the age of 18, and then went
Yeah.
on straight away to the Nigerian Law School and became a barrister at 19.
Wow.
Amazing. That's amazing. I mean, how did you manage at the age of 19, like, especially not knowing much about Africa, like a female, young female, you probably all the cohort is much older than you, right? So how did you manage
Absolutely.
to, um, you know, still
Absolutely.
be, like part of that
I
group?
understand. How did I fit in, and
Yeah,
how was
fitting,
I
exactly.
able? Absolutely. So one of the things I'm grateful to is that I was raised to really believe in myself. My father called me his jet age child since when I was very little. He himself was a maverick. By the way, he was a mathematical genius. That's a story for another day. And so he felt like, and I remember from a very early age, if he would sit us down and engage us in conversations that were really matured conversations about the community, about economics, about the needs of society. And when his friends came in, and they would expect him to, in Africa, children don't sit up and talk with adults. I mean,
Mm.
then they didn't. So they would expect him to send us away, and he would say, "No, no, I want my children to learn and understand, all about these things." So it's interesting that, so by the time I was graduating, I was very, very confident because I was raised to believe in myself. I've always been opinionated. Apologies for that. And Jam, we were in class together, so I'm sure you saw a bit of that at Harvard. And so I was pretty confident. So I don't think I acted my age. I remember that my first appearance in court was again before I was 20, by myself, handling a case in court by myself. I was 19 going on 20. And it was a case in which I was the prosecuting counsel, because my first job was as a prosecutor. After we have a mandatory youth service program in Nigeria, but my first job was as a prosecutor, and I was prosecuting a criminal case, a fraud case, against a lawyer who had taught me in law school,
Oh,
Wow.
much older lawyer, and taught me in law school. And he looked at me and said, "No, you're going to lose this case." I won the case.
hey. Fantastic. Wow.
After that, there was no holding me back because the confidence was there, the feeling that I really can do things if I set my mind to it. But I think a big part of it was the confidence with which I was raised. I was raised to believe in myself. I was raised not to allow myself to be discriminated against because I was a woman or because um, um,
Mhm.
I was young, and my faith in God helped me as well. I mean, I got to develop a personal relationship with God very early in life, and that also really helped me.
And I want to understand, if you were so confident and doing so well in law, what sparked this transition into investment banking?
All right, so it's interesting, but I would say finance was always the way
Hmm.
because remember I told you that my father was a mathematician and he
Mhm.
taught me economics very very early in life, very very early in life, and when I was in university, economics was one of my favorite subjects. And so I studied law because I loved economics, I loved literature, I loved English language, and I loved history. And with that combination in Nigeria, when you go for your examinations, you are able to take courses in law, the social sciences. And I loved law as well. Maybe part of the thing was, even though I wanted to be in finance, I've been called lawyer since I was like 3 years old. Because remember, like I said, I was very outspoken, I was very opinionated even as a little child. So when our relations will come for family holidays, the nickname they called me was, oh, the lawyer is going to come now. Because obviously, if they said something, I was going to have a view about it. So everybody called me lawyer. And so I kind of thought I needed to study law. And so I went and studied law. But as I grew in my law degree program, I began to realize that my interest lay in corporate law, commercial law, the aspects of law that had to do with business. And so by the time I was doing my master's degree at the University of Lagos, I mastered in secured credit transactions, which is still a part of law. So my first 4 years were in the legal department of after my mandatory NYSC were in the legal department of financial institutions. And very soon I realized that I didn't just want to be giving them legal advice, because one of the things I discovered is that they would close the deals, close the transactions, leave the legal department behind, and then when there's a problem, they'll come to you and ask you to fix the problem. So I said to myself, no, I'm not going to let relegate me to the back of this. I'm going to be there when you're structuring these deals so that I'm a part of it, and then we don't run into this kind of problems. Remember, I told you that I'm a problem fixer. That's the kind of person I am. I love to solve problems. So I therefore began to look for opportunities and openings in actually in direct finance as opposed to just giving legal advice. And that's how I went into trusteeship, because I found that trust was a lovely bridge between law and finance, and ultimately into investment banking. And now
Is
I
it
do what I love.
Yeah, is it common to for female to become lawyers in Nigeria?
Yes, yes. I think we have a very good proportion of lawyers in Nigeria. In my class at the University of Ife, we would have been about 40% female,
Oh,
which is
Wow.
very high compared to a lot of other professions. So
Mhm.
yes, Nigerian girls. It's one of the professions that Nigerian girls look forward to being. Yeah.
They're
So
probably
we have
very
a
good at making their point. Making sure they understand, get their point. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So Toyin, what about the influence? Any influence that you got from your mother as an entrepreneur?
Oh, my mother was a very big and positive influence. First of all, to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be a risk taker, and my
Mhm.
mother was a risk taker. She wasn't afraid to branch into new areas, new businesses. She was actually not just an entrepreneur; she was a serial entrepreneur. She owned restaurants. She
Wow.
owned fashion. She owned not her own fashion labels, but fashion trading businesses where she imported and sold clothes, especially ladies' clothes, ladies' shoes, handbags, and one of my earliest experiences in school was during my holidays. I always had to work in one of her shops. It was automatic. Um, so you didn't get to lie at home and sleep. You went to the boutique and you sold. I learned to, and by the way, of course, that investment banking, a very big part of it is selling. You have
Yeah.
to be a good
Yeah.
salesperson. So I learned that from my mother because I think my mother could sell ice to an Eskimo. if,
And Toyin, on that point, sales, you're right, is such a big part of any entrepreneur or any business. What do you think were some of the key lessons that you learned about how to be great at sales?
I think the first thing is that you should focus on people and their needs and not
Hmm.
on selling. So if I come into a conversation with you and all that is on my mind is how I'm going to push this product out to you, you're going to resist me as hard as possible. So the first thing I tell my team members is you need to listen to people and understand where they're at, what they're hoping to accomplish. When you have a good understanding of that, then you can co-create a solution to their problem, and they're going to have a sense of ownership of what you have created. And then you'll find out that you're not selling them at the end of the day. They are actually
Hmm.
selling themselves on the solution that you have
Yeah.
co-created, and there is ownership. So for me, that is very critical. And I love people, so I'm a people person. I want to know people. I want to understand what makes them tick, and in the process, at the end of the day, I end up, creating solutions to their problems.
Yeah. So solving problems rather than selling a product. That's pretty
Absolutely,
much sales, right? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So after that transition from law to finance, what was your first job? Like, what were you doing in terms of in finance?
Okay, so like I said, my first transition from the legal departments of the financial institutions I worked with, I then moved to the trust division of an investment bank. So my entrance into the investment banking fold and into capital markets was via trusteeship, and that was beautiful because as a lawyer, I was helping. First of all, I was working in public trusts, and public trusts enable us to protect the interest of investors who are buying securities in our market. So we were constructing trust deeds and constructing solutions that ensured that anybody that was investing in a bond, for example, or in a collective investment scheme like a mutual fund in our market would be protected by us serving as trustees, holding the underlying assets of the mutual fund, the collective investment scheme, or holding the secured assets in respect of the bonds on behalf of the investing public of Nigeria. So that's the first thing that we did. And then I also worked in corporate trusts where organizations typically SMEs, medium-sized companies were taking facilities from banks, or they were also floating or issuing securities in the public. And again, we needed a trustee to protect the interest of investors, to also, who have custody of the secured assets. And finally, the one that I find most exciting today, of course, was working in private trust as well, helping high net worth individuals like Jam to secure the future, make provisions for Dylan and Dylan's children. and, so we have a strong family office business now
Uh-huh.
at the Emerging Africa Group, and we work with families to secure the future generations. And so private trust was also a big part of what I was doing. And then I went from that to also working in asset management and wealth management, and ultimately to structuring transactions, originating and structuring transactions. Right now, we're in the middle of our largest transaction ever. which is the Nigerian government raising close to $1 billion in one. By the way, the entire size of the transaction is about $2.5 billion, but this first tranche is close to $1 billion, and it's to catalyze the change that we require in the power sector. I don't know whether you know, but about 600 million Africans do not have access to power. And
Wow.
a huge chunk of that population is in Nigeria. And so this particular capital raising is aimed at clearing the backlogs and implementing the reforms that are required to provide power to Nigerians that lack access to power. So our company, Emerging Africa Capital Advisory Limited, is a joint issuing house on that transaction, and we're engaging
So,
the public. It will open any day now, but that's one
yeah.
of the things we're working on.
Toyin, explain to us why there's so many people in your country have that disparity, like not having power. Like some. I mean, there's a huge gap, right? What's the main reason?
All right.
Sorry for
So
my
so
ignorance, by the way.
No, 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 no. It's fine. So the first reason is that there are massive infrastructure gaps, and so there is need for investment in transmission infrastructure. Interestingly enough, even though Nigeria does not have sufficient power, we still supply power to neighboring countries in West Africa. But we need transmission infrastructure that can handle
Mm,
not just our domestic needs, but actually the needs of neighboring countries that rely on Nigeria to provide power. Second reason is, now, why is there a dearth of investments in this critical infrastructure? Because our market, even up till now, has not been able to implement across board market reflective tariffs, simply because it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation. Can the market afford? Can the users afford to pay for the power? And if they don't pay for the power, why would investors want to invest in it? The
mm-hmm,
government has been subsidizing for,
mm-hmm,
seemingly forever. And so we're stuck somewhere halfway between the reforms. And so it's an ongoing reform process. And then, of course, there are other issues. So there are critical policy reforms that need to be made that will come at a cost to the people. There are also capacity requirements and that need to be met. But we're
yeah,
on the way there. And that's
yeah,
part of the reason why we have this
mm,
issuance that we're working
mm.
on.
Yeah, I find this fascinating. So I just want to ask, how do you make something that is, good for the people, also good financially? Like, obviously you're doing a lot of impact investing, but it needs to make financial sense for investors to actually put their
Absolutely.
money on the line. How do you go about
Absolutely.
doing that?
But by the way, thank you for that question, because that's my job. That's what we do every day. Every day we look at the needs of our communities and the needs of the clients that we represent who issue securities, and we work through a solution that makes these investment needs bankable. So
Mm,
now that involves sometimes introducing credit enhancement from some of the credit agencies, multilateral credit agencies, and local ones. Sometimes that also includes, a big part of it is putting in place the right governance structures that will give comfort to investors. So also working on the advocacy and the reforms that are necessary to catalyze the change that we want. Very importantly, listening to investors and putting elements in that solution that speak to their needs and address their needs. We also employ blended finance, because that enables us to bring solutions that are attractive, affordable, and at the right risk level. And very importantly, we are constantly working to develop skills, both skills on and at all levels. So, capacity development, advocacy, and education at all levels, at the investor level, at the regulator level, and very importantly, at the level of the issuer. That is sometimes the government, sometimes the federal government, a subnational government, and other African governments, or the companies that we represent as well. I hope I made that.
Yeah. No,
All
yeah, that
right.
makes sense.
Thank
And
you.
before we get to emerging Africa,
Yeah.
which I definitely want to dive into, you were the group CEO of United Capital, and I want to know, like, during that period, what were the biggest lessons that you learned about leadership, leading such a big organization?
Fantastic. So I need to say that working at United Capital, being invited by the chairman of the Heirs Holdings Group, one of Africa's leading entrepreneurs and one of Africa's leading philanthropists, Tony, was a great opportunity for me to really cut my teeth in leadership at a high level, because I was running a public company listed on the Nigeria Exchange. I was also leading a very huge team, and I was responsible, obviously, for transactions of huge, massive significance. My greatest lessons, first of all, is that it's all about people, especially when you're running a service organization. You're not selling widgets, you're not creating vehicles, you're not competing on the basis of who has the fastest car. You're competing, or the safest car. You're competing at the end of the day based on who has the best people. So the greatest lesson for me was that my effectiveness as a leader was dependent on my ability to maximize the output of the people that I have been given to work with, and for them to people work from the heart when the chips are down. So for them to provide, or to perform, at their optimal level, they need to have a sense of safety that makes them to be themselves in the organization. They need to know that they will not be penalized for thinking independently. In fact, you want them to think creatively, you want them to be innovative, and you want them to feel safe experimenting, as long as the intentions are right and they are experimenting within the parameters that you have set. So those are some of the lessons that I learned running. The last thing I would say is that because it was a public company, it is a public company, it helped me to understand the highest levels of governance that are required to run a company. And so when we set up Emerging Africa 8 years ago, I was running a public entity, so I was not going to set it up to any standard lower than that. So from day one, we set it up to the highest standards of governance.
So, Toyin, what made you decided to leave such a high-profile role and start founding the Emerging Africa organization group?
The crave for deeper level of impact, or the quest. Well, this is quest for success. And remember that I defined success to me as essentially impact, fulfillment that I get from, solving problems for people. So the more I did my very successful job at United Capital, and I'm proud the institution is still doing very well, the more I realized that there were categories of issuers and clients that were kind of below our radar. So I could work with SMEs, I could work with MSMEs, but these entities, their requirements were usually lower than our minimum ticket size. And our minimum ticket size was understandable, because this was a public company with about 650,000 shareholders who, expected their dividends every year, and the cost of serving a client that is looking for $500,000 is exactly the same cost, and sometimes it's even higher than what it takes to serve a client that is looking for $100 million. So I'm going to, I would, in the best interest of my shareholders, which was what I was employed to achieve, I would always need to prioritize the higher size transactions. And I said to myself, if I had an opportunity to establish an organization that did not have the same cost profile, and did not have the same shareholder profile that led to some of these expectations, then I could work with smaller clients and I could take smaller size transactions and still give them the same quality of service that we did on the other side. And that's what we started to do. And today it's interesting because at Emerging Africa, we have a fantastic blend. We work with governments, we do $200 million, 2.5 billion dollar deals, but we can also work with a client who's looking to raise $10,000 or less. And we're
Amazing.
able to do that because we own two microfinance banks that operate at that level and are embedded within our communities. One right here in Lagos, another one in Kaduna, northern Nigeria. So that scope, that breadth, that flexibility was what I was looking for because it was essential to my personal sense of fulfillment, and I have it now.
Amazing.
And when did you start that?
January, so we're going to be 8 years as an entity.
Wow.
It was incorporated in January 2018, but we actually opened our doors in July 2018. So 7.5 years in operation, 8 years in legal existence. The entity was incorporated after I gave my notice of exit from
Yeah.
my former position, and then we took another 6 months, for me to serve my notice and for me to be ready to leave. And then we started in July 2018.
And during that period, do you have like a rough number of the amount of capital that you have deployed?
Oh, well, yes. So between commencement and now, for our clients, we have succeeded in raising over $2 billion, close to $3 billion now. And all that has been deployed within Africa. And with this new transaction that we're working on, we would have scaled the $5 billion mark, by next year.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And do you have like a core investment thesis that you operate under?
Yes, we do have a core investment thesis, and it's also driven by our commitment to sustainability.
Ah.
And so we actually practically everything we do has to align with our sustainability policy, and that policy is robust and is implemented and enabled us to become the first West African financial services institution to achieve ISO 26000 certification as an ESG led company.
Wow. Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I was also reading that in 2019, and correct me if I'm wrong, you launched a gender focused fund, which was
Yeah,
primarily driven about investing into women. And this is
absolutely.
such a fascinating concept. Can you can you share with us, what the thesis was there and the results?
Thank you. So it's called the Emerging Africa Balanced Diversity Fund, and the intention was to invest in securities of companies that meet our own set minimum standards in terms of involvement of women in on the boards, in leadership, and in management. And it's interesting, by the way, because we also meet those standards at Emerging Africa. In fact, we surpass those standards. We're women owned, predominantly women led, predominantly, but also very inclusive in terms of welcoming, the men, because we know that we do require that balance.
Hmm.
Now, that fund then went ahead to structure an investment policy that was based on that. Is duly registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. As at the last count, that fund had returned over 43% per annum,
Wow.
annual rate, as at the last, yes, because so that fund is also helping us to prove that women-led or diverse businesses that recognize
Hmm.
and adhere to the guidelines of diversity also tend to outperform their peers. So it's a very interesting story. It's been an interesting story.
That's amazing. That's talking about recognition. You've been recognized as one of the Africa's top business leaders by Forbes, right? And what do those awards mean to you?
I appreciate the awards. The beauty of it is that I will do what I do and would continue to do what I do if nobody gave me an award. I will do what I do if nobody paid me. And by the way, that goes into, yes, that goes also into my definition of success
Mm.
is finding something that you will do because it fulfills you, and then finding that you can actually achieve financial success and social recognition whilst doing what rewards you, what fulfills you personally. So I appreciate the rewards, the awards, the multiple awards, because they demonstrate that we're doing the right thing. It's encouraging for me and for my team. And it also is good for our brand. It creates the inspires confidence in others who want to deal with us. And so those recognitions are very, very appreciated. One of the most recent ones that we're very proud of is that we've been ranked one of the top 50 fastest growing companies in Africa by Financial Times,
Wow, amazing.
number 46 to be precise. And they analyzed our performance across revenue, profit, and staff growth over a 3-year period. And they analyzed companies across Africa, and we found, ourselves at number 46. So that is so we love the awards, but we don't
Yeah,
work for the awards.
that's amazing. And what responsibility you think you get with this as a role model, especially for women in Africa?
It's a high pressure position because the good part of it is that I mean, and all the time I hear women saying to me, young ladies reaching out to me and saying, we love seeing what you do because it lets us know that we can also do the same, and it keeps us going because we know that we can achieve our goals. The challenge with it is obviously that it puts you under a lot of pressure to keep winning. And you now have to balance that and make sure that at no time does winning and the social recognition and the applause, at no time does it become more important than the reason why you went into this in the first place, which is to serve and to help. So one of the things that has helped us to balance it is the fact that we have very clearly articulated our boundaries because of our sustainability policy. So we know
Yep.
that it's not about chasing numbers at all costs.
Yeah. That's, that I'm very inspired by that. And I think it's a great message to share as well. One thing that I
Thank
want
you.
to ask you is, you've been a CEO, you've served on boards, you've been a founder, and at the same time also been a mother. How do you balance and juggle all those things?
It's interesting because you can imagine I am a wife, I am a mother, I'm a grandmother of one, and
Oh,
I'm
wow.
looking forward to more. I am a pastor. Um, and I serve my community on various levels. So yes, sometimes it feels like you're being pulled in multiple directions. But I think being centered, knowing what is important to me and knowing why I am doing this has always helped me to stay balanced. I have a very strong sense of priority, and I prioritize the key aspects of my life. And to be honest with you, my faith and my family come first, and then the second is my assignment to the rest
Yeah.
of the world.
Uh, yeah. And I also love your connecting. You're not just inspiring people in Nigeria, you're also inspiring people around the world, including myself. And you put a daily word every day, right? So it's related to you. How did you come about this daily word in
Thank you. Yeah. So I started my word for today on LinkedIn about 13 years ago, and I really just realized that. I kept getting requests for me to mentor people. So I get a lot of requests, messages, calls, introductions. Can you be my mentor? And I realized that there was a limit to how many people I
Yeah.
could mentor. And I said to myself, is there a platform that enables me to give some kind of mentorship that, then people can still feel engaged, feel they're learning from me as frequently as possible, and that was what LinkedIn did for me. So I started putting out the word for the day on LinkedIn, and when people respond to the word for the day, either by way of comments or send me a DM, then it gives me an opportunity, especially if they're asking a question that relates to their own application of the word, gives me an opportunity to provide that mentorship. So that's what I do. That's why I do that.
And also talking about, a lot of this mentorship and giving back. I saw that you've started your own foundation focused on, a lot of philanthropy. Can you tell us what you're trying to do with your foundation?
Thank you. So the Toyin F. Sanni Foundation works with underserved African women and children. And the intention again is to bridge the gap in terms of opportunities, in terms of access to education, in terms of access to relevant networks, and of course, also access to power and other resources. So we've had projects that have provided solar lamp. I've talked to you about the power gap. So we've had projects that have provided solar lamp school bags to school pupils in the intraland in Nigeria. And what that has done is that these pupils don't have access to electricity at home, but they can take these school bags to school. And whilst they're learning in school, the bag is out there on the outside the school, and the bags are charging. The lamps in the bags are charging. And then when they go home, they can study with those lamps, and actually their family members also can work by the light of those lamps. So those are some of the projects that we have embarked on. We've also embarked on mobility for handicapped children. To get them to school and bring them back can be quite a nightmare. We have sponsored some at the higher levels. We've sponsored some young ladies to go for their professional exams as to become chartered accountants, and then we provide internship opportunities for them when they qualify. Those are the kind of things we've done.
Man.
Do you do you ever look back and think of how many lives that you've impacted?
I look forward to think of how many lives
More.
more I could impact if I had more resources.
Man, anything you don't do, like amazing, like unbelievable. Toyin, talking about investments and a lot of things that you're doing in Nigeria, more than Nigeria, in Africa, do you see what are the key opportunities in that market?
Okay. One of the biggest opportunities that I see in Africa and in Nigeria in particular is just the size of the youth of this.
Mhm.
First of all, it's a very young demographic. So we're looking at 70% of our people are under the age of 30, and they are hungry for knowledge, hungry for impact, and very, very technology savvy. And that means that there is a huge opportunity even in AI and digital technology. I don't know whether you know, but Nigeria has one of the largest crypto markets in the whole world.
Wow.
And when you consider that, when you compare that to the actual size of our economy, and we're talking about both in terms of the numbers of those who are trading in these assets, and we are also talking about the volume and the size.
Yep.
So it means that it's a very strong market for a long-term investor in retail financial services, especially driven by technology. And we are open to partner with international entities who are looking to access the size of this retail market.
And what's the limiting factor for a lot of these opportunities? Is it capital? Is it people? Is it what's the constraint?
So the main constraint is capital. The second constraint is technology. The third constraints are infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure now, talking about both physical infrastructure and also critical reforms that we need to continue to make our markets attractive.
So how do you balance a risk and innovation when you're launching a financial, like a venture or product in that kind of a
Yeah,
market?
yeah. I mean, it is a challenge in the sense that um, you want to innovate as fast as possible to solve the problems that that face us, and at the same time you want to test and be sure that there is a market for what you're innovating. And when I say a market, effective demand, so the market can actually afford to pay for the services that you're innovating. And so balancing it is making sure that you have a plug and play
Yep.
process of testing the market, at the same time knowing when to cut a solution that is not going to fly and go on to the next solution. So it's just walking
Yep.
that thin line between analysis paralysis
Yep.
and actually the other extreme of not innovating fast enough.
Yep. Yep.
And I suppose, what is your vision for emerging Africa?
Thank you. My vision for Emerging Africa is that it becomes a household name across Africa. My vision for Emerging Africa is that it becomes the key catalyst for the emergence of Africa as a leading investment destination and origin.
That's amazing.
And are you seeing a lot of capital coming from within Africa itself in terms of the investments, or is a lot of it coming from overseas?
So right now, a lot of the investments is actually still coming from within Africa. Africa is starved of global investments. We don't have our fair share of global investments at all. We were analyzing even investments in clean energy, for example, and Africa has less than 3%. I was speaking on a panel at the Africa Development Bank. We have less than 3% of those investment flows across the world. So we're not getting our fair share of global investments. There are perception issues that obstruct investors. Whereas the few investors that do come here have seen that the kind of returns that they enjoy in our markets are unimaginable in the developed world and in other parts of the world. So a lot of the investment funds are still flowing from within Africa, but part of our job is to engage with the world and catalyze more of those flows and
Yeah.
engage with
So,
our regulators also and with our policymakers to ensure that our policies continue to be investor friendly. I hope you guys will be able to participate in our investor summit that we're going to hold in February. It's going to be both in person and virtual. So it will be an opportunity to continue the conversation about investment in Nigeria and the rest of Africa.
Absolutely.
that's amazing. So do you think you can change that perception globally? Like, is that something that you're thinking of doing, part of many things that you do?
It's what we're doing every day, and that's why we speak on multiple platforms. That's why we love the kind of opportunity you're giving to us. That's why we hold our investor summit. But it's not a job that we can do alone. We need all
Yeah.
hands on deck. That's why we collaborate also with agencies of government and with other providers of financial services and other investment banks within the region and global partners as well.
And Toyin, I suppose, do you have any advice for the younger version of yourself, or a young, hungry individual who is listening to this and is inspired by your story?
Thank you. So my first advice is develop yourself as fast as you can. Get all the knowledge that you can. Read widely. Use technology to access as much knowledge as you can. And then the second thing is please do as quick as you can. Be a doer. So, yes, be a learner and a thinker, but also be a doer. And you will never know if you would have succeeded until you actually try. So,
Mm.
please, and if you are trying and you're working on something, and after a while you see that it's not working, don't be ashamed to drop it and try the
Yeah,
next thing.
yeah. It's okay to
All
fail.
the greatest successes, yeah, it's okay, all the greatest successes in the world have, had quite a few failures before they finally found the formula that worked for them.
Yeah, yeah,
So know when to drop this one and try the next one, and
yeah.
keep trying. And you only fail when you quit trying, so just keep at
Exactly right. Yeah. Great advice, Toyin. How important continuous learning, Toyin. I know you've done so many courses. That's how I met you at Harvard, and I've seen there's so many other things that you've done. How important is that continue to learn?
it's of vital importance because first of all the world is changing. So what you thought you knew last year, may not be able to compare with what the knowledge that is actually available today. Second reason is that in the process of going for programs like the one at Harvard, you meet fantastic people like Jam, and you don't know how they're going to impact your life and contribute to your success. And thirdly is that it inspires confidence in those who are engaging with you to know that you have put in all that effort to develop yourself.
And Toyin, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
The legacy I want to leave behind is for people to know that I did everything I could to make my world a better place.
And
Short and sweet, but very powerful.
very powerful.
And Toyin, I suppose looking back on your journey, which is an incredibly fruitful journey, do you feel successful, given that your definition of success was largely around, finding that fulfillment and living up to your assignment or your purpose?
I feel successful for where I am today, but I don't feel like I've hit the peak. I feel that there are many more successes down the line, and I feel there is a sense of eagerness to climb the next mountain.
Wow. Yeah. I'm glad you feel successful because,
Oh,
you've done so many incredible things and you've definitely touched and changed countless lives. But before we wrap up, I've been jotting down a few values or traits which you embody, which I think have definitely been critical to your success. And I'd like to share them with you. The first one is you're very values driven. And I think that definitely came from your upbringing and your family of always being in service to others. And I think that's such a core value to have of you're doing everything in your power to help the next person in line. And it's such an amazing trait, and it's definitely led you to where you are today. The next is self-belief. I honestly can't imagine being 19 or 20 years old and going into the courtroom and having to front up against one of my ex-teachers in court. And that's just one example. You've had so much courage and self-belief to take the risks, take the leaps, and that's definitely led you to here. The next one is being a deep learner. And I think that comes from as a young age, starting school early, always wanting to push and learn as much as you can, just being an absolute sponge for knowledge. And then, studying law and then becoming a financier. And now even discussing with you, you clearly know so much about energy and so many different topics. So absorbing knowledge from all sources. And the final one, you mentioned it just before, you're a doer. You set ambitious targets, ambitious goals to change Nigeria, change the world, and you're doing it. You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk as well.
Yeah. And I feel really privileged to have this conversation, Toyin. I feel like I had the opportunity to know you, maybe 1%, but it's amazing to know. But you're a true leader, right? So when we really look at everything that you're doing and how Dylan summarized your traits, that's a true leadership. Like, you're doing everything not just for you, you're doing with a purpose for others. So that's how I define leadership. And thank you so much being with us. It's awesome conversation. We can continue this for more and more, and one day we might have to come to Nigeria and see what you're doing. And yeah, we will really learn so much from this discussion.
That will be amazing. And I have thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you both. I thank you for the opportunity. I congratulate you. I don't think there's anything more exciting than doing what you love with the person you love. So well done and keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Toyin. That means a lot. And for those of our listeners who have taken something away from today's episode, it would mean the world if you could like and subscribe. Helps us to get more and more ears. And if you want to see more of our inspirational content, you can do so at our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening.